Well, as you can see, we've got snow. It snowed about a foot a couple of days ago, and it's been really cold, so snow's not going anywhere. So, hey, we got a garden full of snow. Today's story goes back to that first summer that I lived in Nevada County. 73, I came up here to visit on a vacation, and I loved it. And so I came back in March of that next year, 1974, lived in town, and came out to the rivers and creeks in this general area. Spent most of my free time out there. I had I had a job that I had to go to, I think it was 4 days a week, which was way more than I wanted to do at age 24. I wanted to go out to the creeks and rivers and watch all the naked women. Hey, what else does a 24-year-old do? So anyhow, I'm out at this creek and hanging out, and there's, about 30 or 40 young people at Oregon Creek Falls, and I got to talking to this couple, and they were really nice, and they invited me to come up to the Oak Valley Herb Farm, which was about 10 miles away from where we were at that moment, and about 5 miles north of Camptonville, which is maybe 30 miles north of Nevada City, which is about 60 miles northeast of Sacramento. So yeah, I go out there, and it's this hippie commune, and there's 20 or 30 young people hanging out there. It was pretty cool. I really enjoyed it, and everybody was nice enough, and we had a good time. And I just ended up migrating out there most every day, just help out in the garden and do all kinds of things. It felt like a family, which is I didn't have at that time, because I'd moved away from the Bay Area. So I'm hanging out with these folks, and as after a while, I present myself to the, whoever was the governing board, and said, hey, I'd like to move here. And everybody was like, yeah, you can move here. We'd love to have you. So I moved out, and I was living in a potter's co-op. And so I packed all my stuff, moved out to Oak Valley Herb Farm, and they moved me into the only free place in the whole place. There was 3 big buildings and a couple of smaller buildings for people to live in, but the only room that was available at the time was the library, which was inside of this old barn structure that didn't have electricity. It had running water, but it was pretty minor, and no flush toilet, of course, and it had a wood-fired cook stove. It was pretty cool for a 24-year-old. At this age, forget it. But hey, I was young, I was crazy, I was hey, I was with people that I felt comfortable with. And that was really, really important. And we spent the summer there just having a great time, working in the garden, doing, all kinds of weeding and thinning of the forest, and, all kinds of cool stuff. Sometime in the autumn, and I remember distinctly, it was still warm out, but the trees were turning. It was just spectacularly beautiful. We met, this family moved in, not to the herb farm, but to another property that was fairly close by. Maybe at the edge of the herb farm property, it was, a couple of 100 feet away. Of course, from our buildings, it was a quarter of a mile. So they moved in, and we got to know them. They were really nice people. A guy and his wife and 2 kids, 2 boys. And, you know, as time develops, we get to be friends, and they invite us over for dinner one night. And this is, you know, as I said, this is mid-autumn. Trees are turning, but it's still warm out. So, you know, they invite, I can't remember, there was 6 of us for dinner. And the couple and the 2 boys. And so we show up, and it's this really nice dinner. They, you know, have a nice spread, and we're just really pleased with that. And we start talking to them about the house that they're living in. And it turns out that the house, a woman lived in that house for 50 years or 60 years, a long stretch of time. And she had gotten too old, and she moved into town to a rest home. And so the house was vacant, and this couple just happened to show up at the right time, and they rented the house. And they were telling us, you know, the stories about the woman and what she did and how she did it. And she was like a avid gardener, and there was a beautiful garden out back. And but the folks had just moved in, and it was autumn, so they got a little bit of stuff in, but not much. And dinner was delightful. Storytelling was great. We had a great time. We're sitting at the kitchen table. Well, it's not the kitchen table. I think it was the living room. The table had been moved into the living room because there was, you know, 8 or 9 of us. And you know, I'm thinking, well, you know, where's dessert? Come on. But I'm not saying anything because, you know, these are nice people. I like them. And finally the guy says, you know, we've got dessert, but you're not gonna believe it. And I said, really? What do you got? And he said, follow me. So we get up from the table, and there's like, you know, 10 of us. Get up from the table and follow him to the back of the house. Now, this is a house, you know, a house probably the size of my shop. Not a huge house, but a pretty good sized house. And he takes us to this back door, and the door leads down into the basement. And the basement is a full-fledged basement. You know, you stand up in it, got a concrete floor, and we walk down into the basement, and he turns the light on, and it's a full open basement, you know, with piers and stuff, but a full open basement. You can walk all the way around it. Up against each wall was shelves, and on those shelves were quart jars with vegetables and fruit and all kinds of stuff canned. And he just reaches over and grabs a can and hands it to me, and I look at it, and it's canned cherries, and the date on it is 1957. And I'm like, whoa. And I look at the cherries, and they look great. I mean, slightly discolored, but they get discolored from canning. My friend says, this is what we're having for dessert. And I was like, really, 1957? He goes, we've been eating it since we got here. So we take this quart jar of canned cherries up to the house, up into the living space. And there, you know, probably down there were maybe 1,000 jars, all with okra and peaches and beets and everything you could possibly can was in those jars. Now, some of the jars had gone bad, it's true, but you could tell right away. I mean, 1957, you could tell right away when the jar had gone bad because it was just totally moldy. So anyhow, we open up these canned cherries and he pours them out into the bowl and serves, everybody gets served a portion. And we take the cherry, and I'm not, I'm still a little squeamish about the whole thing. 1957. So I take it in a spoon and I'm thinking, okay, well, I'll just put it in my mouth and see how it goes. So I put it in my mouth and it's like a cherry that I just picked from the tree and ate. It's amazing. It's just sweet and fresh, and it's been there for, at that point, 1974, 50, 60, 70, it was there for 25 years. And I was like, wow, this is the coolest. And it kind of brought home to me how canning really is a preservative. I mean, that many years have just sat there. And we went back to that house several times, well, actually many times during the rest of that autumn and that winter. And they brought out different things to try, and they were just having a great time eating the canning that this woman had probably spent her whole life doing. And hey, this is Nick Collier. That's the end of that story. This is Nick Collier. Checking out.